everybody. My name is Jessica and I am a program assistant with Coach Art. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to create this awesome painting here using Q-tips. So a couple of things that we are going to need today. We're going to start off with our paintbrushes. So I'm going to still be using paintbrushes today, mainly to do the background. So we're going to use a flat paintbrush and a round paintbrush. We're also going to need a few Q-tips. You just want to grab a couple different ones. And lastly, we're going to need a few different colors of paint. And we're going to start off with our white paint. So if you want to go ahead and get just a little bit of that to start off, I'm going to be using this color palette here, but if you have a plastic paint, plastic plate you can use to mix your colors on. Sorry if you can hear that, that's my cat. Okay. So as you can see in the painting here, we have the background, and then we also have this waterfall and the lush like green forest ground on the bottom there. So to sort of get this effect, we want to start by making the middle of the painting white. So you're just going to go ahead and load some white paint up onto your brush. And if you're using a canvas, you might want to thin the paint with a little bit of water. I'm going to go ahead and using cardstock paper, so I'm going to go with a dry brush. And just a little bit of paint right in the top middle. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to go over some of it, but we do want to just make sure that this part is extra bright, even though you might not be able to see where I am painting. Awesome. So then the next step is going to be the background. So you'll notice the sky here is yellow behind the red and orange trees. The sky is kind of like a yellowish sunset, and it fades to a little bit of orange in the background. So to get that effect, we're going to start by getting a little bit of yellow and orange paint onto our palette. And if you still have a little bit of white paint on your palette, that's going to be really good because you can use it to mix some of these colors together and make them lighter and help them to fade into each other. Okay, so I went ahead and I grabbed some yellow here and some orange right here. And I'm going to mix just a little bit of the two together on the side. And I didn't rinse my paintbrush off or anything, I just kept the white paint on there. And I want the first layer to be pretty yellow, so I'm going to go in with a little bit more yellow than orange. And we're just going to go ahead across the top of the page. And extend like so. Now you just want to do the first 2 inches or so at the top of the page. Okay. And once you feel like you have a good layer, you can go ahead and add a little bit of dimension. So I'm going to do that by grabbing just the yellow without it mixed and adding some of that in the center. Then I'm going to go in with just the orange and add a little bit of some streaks in there. And this is going to make the sky look like it's more sunsetty. You know how in the real sky the colors are kind of faded into each other. So that's the effect that we're going after by doing this, layering colors. And I'm going to go in with a little bit of yellow and white to lighten up my yellow that I have in the center. So it kind of resembles something like the sun in the background. So this is about right here in the painting. You see how right here is pretty light and it kind of looks like through the trees the sun might be there. So that's what I am trying to recreate. I may have covered a little bit of, and I'm rinsing my brush off in some water right now because I see I covered a little bit of my white too much. So I'm going to just go over it with a little bit more white to make sure it shows up. Thank you. Checking out the comments. Thank you guys for joining me today. Okay, so I just cleaned off my brush and I'm going to go ahead back into the white paint and go over this a little bit because I accidentally covered it. Okay, so the next step is going to be to extend the background paint down. So, oops. So down here, we don't need to cover as much, but we do want to get that perspective side of the background painted. So I'll show you what I mean. And we're just gonna go ahead and if you have any more of the orange, yellow mixture that you made earlier, you can use that, or you can add to it, get some more paint layered up if you need to. But I still have a little bit of paint left, so I'm gonna use what I have on my palette, and I'm going to paint like a upside down triangle on both sides, orange for the background, orangey, yellow. Depending on how light you want your sky to be. You're just going in with big strokes. This is all in the background. Nothing needs to be really neat. The trees and the waterfall are going to cover over it. So don't feel like it needs to be super perfect right now. Okay, and I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. And I'm going to go ahead and mark it a little bit. And let me get some more paint because I'm running low. And I went ahead and got some more yellow and orange paint. Okay. I'm just going to blend this out here on this side. You know, I think I'm going to go ahead and cover a little bit extra down here. Just to be a little forgiving in case I change up the line for the waterfall. Okay, so there we go. So we have both back of the sides painted orange. In the middle, we have left white and a little bit of yellow here. So just gonna give that a second to dry. And while we're doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and clean my brush off, and I'll talk to you about the next steps. So we're going to go ahead and get into the Q-tip part, which is gonna be a lot of fun. We'll just have to create the base for the trees first. So before we can add the Q-tips, we're gonna go ahead and paint, use black and brown to paint the tree trunks that you see here along the guidelines that you sort of painted already. And for that, we're going to be using the small brush here, just so that we can have a very nice, clean, straight line. And I don't actually have a brown paint, but I do have a purplish paint, a little bit of red and black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little dab of purple and I'm going to mix it in with some of the yellow that I have here, and a dab of black, and maybe a little bit of that red depending on how the color comes out, and I'm going to try and make my own brown. So if you're like me and you maybe don't have all of the colors, there are ways to do a little bit of color mixing so that you can get the outlook that you want. See, I'm just going in with a little dab of black that I have there on my brush. Actually, I might make a little black. We do end up using a bit of brown because you'll use it for down here as well for the tree trunk. So I might just go and make a bigger batch ahead of time. If you're not like me and you already have the brown paint, then you can just wait for your background to finish drying. That way we don't muddy up any of the colors. Too much black, way too dark. Let's try that again. Go with some yellow and purple. Let me check out the comments. Thanks for joining me, guys. Okay, guys, we're getting somewhere. It looks still a little purple on the camera, but I swear in person, it's like a dark brown. Can you tell here when I paint? It's like a dark brown. Okay. So I've got my brown made. I've got black up here from my failed brown mixture, and we're gonna go ahead and start painting the tree trunks. So I'm gonna start by painting two right up here, sort of where that sun is, and they're gonna be two small lines, maybe about 1 to 2 inches, because they're further back. So you also want them to be skinny so that it looks further back to the eye in the painting. Let's see. 1, 2, just like that. Okay, and then we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing for other trees along these sides, but as you get closer to the bottom or to the front of the painting, we're gonna make them bigger. And that's gonna make it seem like this part is farther away and make it look a little bit more 3D. So you can just draw some tree trunks. I like to start by drawing a line and then going and forming a triangle on the bottom as it goes out. Sometimes I'll just draw a single line like that. And I'm going to draw one big tree right here. You can place your trees wherever you feel comfortable. If you want to do more or less trees, don't feel like you don't have any creative power, you can definitely make this your own. My paint was still a little wet, so it's kind of showing the paint in the background, but it's okay because we are going to go over this one here with a little bit of black because it's so close to the front, so you want that to really pop. Okay, I think I'm also going to add a hidden tree over on this side. And then we're going to go ahead and do something similar to the right side. And the reason that we're using black and brown paint is to create the effect of like shadows and lights hitting the trees at different angles. So if we leave one side a lighter brown and the other side a black, it's going to look like the tree is a little bit more 3D than a flat 2D tree on the page. And I think I'm just going to have big tree sort of hiding in the corner here. And as you'll see, my trees aren't exactly in the same place as they were in the demo photo. That's okay, and it also really speaks to how each of these that you guys do at home will be unique in their own ways. It's a lot of fun. Very easy. All right, that looks good. I think I might maybe add one more tree. I might want to do one here, a small one. Maybe just a lone soldier right here. Okay. Oh, I know. Actually, I think I didn't add any branches to any of them. So before I move on, I'm just gonna draw some lines sticking out from the trees. That way, it looks like the flowers are holding on to something. They look like little arms almost, if you think about it. I don't want them to look too symmetrical though, so I'm gonna try not to do the same branch pattern. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. Yes. Okay, guys. I'm going to take a brief pause and check out the comments. Awesome. Okay. So You don't need to rinse off your brush. I'm going to go ahead and leave the brown on. And if you don't have black already on your palette, you can go ahead and get a little bit of black paint out. And I'm going to go into some black paint that I have up here already. And I'm just going to choose, let's see, the light is coming from this side. So on the right side, on the outer side of the trees, I'm going to paint them black. And I'm just going to paint about maybe half. Just go over it with black. And this is also going to cover up some of the gaps that you might have had. If you decide to leave your trees all brown, but you do sort of have some of the patchy moments that I have here, you can just go ahead and wait for some of your paint to dry and go over it with another layer of brown. That will make it pop off the page as well. Cool. And I'm just going to make a line, black straight line on one of these trees. I'm going to do the same. Make sure my hand isn't dirty before I touch the page. Okay. Do the same thing for up here. Black line. And on the trees on this side, it's going to be on the left side. So I'm going to go on the left side. Oops. Paint black line. I think I'm going to paint the majority of this tree black. Just because it's one of my focal trees, and I want it to really have a moment on the page. All right. So once you feel like you're satisfied with your tree trunks, you can briefly go ahead and clean off your brush and then paint it, place it to the side because we're going to be moving on to the Q-tips. And that's how we're going to fill up the majority of, or the rest of the painting for the most part. We will go back to using the paintbrushes in order to do the waterfall a little bit closer to the very end. But for now, if you have your Q-tips, you'll want to go ahead and start with 2 or 3 and put them in a cluster like this. In this way, it won't take so long if you're doing 1 dot at a time. You can kind of do 2 or 3 dots and you'll cover more space. And you'll sort of also get a little pattern if you're trying to do something specific, which is nice. So for my trees, I'm going to start off with the light color. So the trees are a mixture of pink, red, a little bit of yellow. So I'm going to start with a light pink. So I'm going to mix some of the purple that I had earlier and some white paint. It's really like a magenta. So if you already have a light pink color, then you can just prep that. And I'm mixing with my brush. If you don't have I don't recommend mixing with the Q-tip because it will become overloaded with paint. So I created a light color here, and I'm just going to grab my brushes and dip them right on into that paint that I have created here. And starting on the side, because the paint is pretty dense right now, I'm just going to go ahead and make some stamping motions. And I'm just going to put them very randomly. Okay, some of my black paint hasn't dried yet. So if you notice that some of your paint isn't dry, maybe you put a layer that was too thick, you might see that your Q-tip will pick up some of that paint. So if it does that, you can always just wait for the Q-tip to dry a little bit and then use the other two and just avoid the part where the paint is wet so you don't accidentally put the wrong color all over your page. So just cover up that. I see the paint's a little wet right here. So I'm just going to bring some of these dots down. And I'm going to lightly do some dots here. And it's really simple. I'm not tapping too hard onto the page or onto my canvas. I'm really sort of just dabbing it. Have to be careful in this section because my paint is still pretty wet. Okay. Alright. It looks a little bit purplish, so that's okay. I think, oh, I forgot about my red. I'm just going to use a little bit of red here. And I might lighten that up with some white. Just like a dash of white. Depending on the colors that you're using, you can pick the shades that you like the best. And if you like the idea of the purple trees, you can also, instead of using a dark red, go in with a darker purple. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab some of this red paint. Just mixing it here. And I'm going to use the other side of my Q-tips. So one side is the purple, on the other side I'm going to go in with the red. Stick that in. And I am going to go over top of the dots I just created. And you want to fill in gaps too. You're not just going right over top. You're also filling in some of the gaps that you left in the trees. And you'll start to notice it filling up. And the reason I took the color down is because you'll see in the demo photo here that the petals are sort of falling off of the trees here from the leaves. Petals are leaves. They fall off of the tree, and so some of that color is down here, and I just want to incorporate all of it. So I did bring just a little bit of the color down. It might end up getting covered up later by darker colors, but it is there to remind me to share and spread the color around. If you don't have Q-tips, you can also use just the tip of the round brush. It's a similar effect. You just have to have a little bit more control over the pressure you put on the brush in order to get it to look similar, like have the dots all look similar like it does here, but it's definitely achievable. Oh no. So I got a little bit of black, but that's okay. It can kind of look like a tree, maybe. A tree in the background. So I'm going to switch out my Q-tips and just get some new ones. If yours are still okay, then you can use those. I am going to go in with a little bit of orange and some red. And try to get like an orangey red color going and do the same thing. I'm just going to go ahead and continue to fill in some of the spaces here and add on some colors. But with this new orangey red color, I'm also going to go ahead and start to line my sides here. So I'll show you as I get started. I'm going to start with this side because it's a little drier. If you notice your paint is way too wet, because mine still has some wet spots, like this tree right here, which is mainly the biggest wet thing on my painting. But if yours is really wet, I would pause for a moment and maybe just go ahead and pick up your piece and give it a good wave to get the paint to dry some. Or if you have a fan, you can go ahead and fan it off. Because with the stamping, you do want your background to be dry. Otherwise, you will end up stamping the wrong colors. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and give some of this paint a chance to dry. And while that's drying, I'm going to use my small brush. Go ahead and clean it off because you see I have some red paint on it. I'm going to clean this off. And I'm going to go ahead and prep a light blue so that we can mark the outline of the waterfall and begin to paint the dots around it. That way you can start to pile on top of it. So I already have a light blue paint. If you have a dark blue paint, I would go ahead and mix some of the dark blue with white until you get it to be a light blue color. And even still, I'm going to add a little bit of white to my blue paint here, just so that it looks a little bit more like very pretty water-like. I don't know how else to describe the color. Okay, so we're just going to see a general like outline for the waterfall. So this is going to be like the first top layer. So the waterfall has sections. There's this one, and then it falls off into the bottom. So just painting. And this should be sort of around where the white paint you painted is, or just beneath it. Okay, and then for the second part, waterfall, kind of just go like that. And I'm just laying the blue paint down for the background to get it started. There's some layers. I can see some of the yellow paint behind it. All right, so that's, now that we know where our waterfall is going to go, we can start to add more of the colors around this area here. So you can see here, it looks like there's some green, some brown, a little bit of red, and there's a lighter brown up here as we get closer to the top of the waterfall. So let's start with the green that we have here at the bottom. It's a green mixed with brown, but we'll start with the green. And if you still have some of the brown from earlier already out, then you can definitely dip some of your green paint in there. Just like maybe you dip one of your Q-tips into the green and one into the brown. So I'm gonna grab some green paint. And I do still have a little bit of brown, so I'm just gonna do a dip into the brown and then I'm gonna go into the green. Okay. And then there is some free strings floating. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and start to place green down. Dip into the brown and then into the green. Ooh, a lot of brown this time. If in your painting you're going over some of the trees, that's okay. That helps to blend the base in. So it works to hide any of the paint marks that weren't like, that didn't resemble the end of trees. You can just hide those. And it blends away into the forest floor. Like so. Let me pause right quick. Okay. I'm running kind of low on my brown, but it's okay. I can make some more brown. Also, if you have red, if you didn't have brown, use like red and you layered it with a little bit of the black, it could also resemble brownish color. I'm also going to put some green up here, just randomly in the trees. Kind of just because I like the way it looks. Okay. So I'm only taking this, the green brownish paint up to about right at the base of the second layer or the first layer, like at the middle point of the two waterfalls. And then I'm just going to continue to fill in down here. Next, I think I'm going to go ahead and with red, or actually I might do, yeah, we'll do red. I'm trying to think about how I'm going to get I think we'll do a red and a yellow mixture. That sounds cool. Okay. And I am going to go over some of these spots here. This is before we brought some of the red down, but I do want to incorporate it some more and help blend it in. And then I'm going to go over it with the brown to help it look also like the ground still. But if you think about like the forest floor and how many things live on it, how many things have fallen, you consider the very beautiful treetops that live at the top here of your painting, it really makes sense to have some of the red have fallen from the trees and start to tarnish. So that's why I'm really adding that right here. Okay, I'm gonna make another brown because I have run out a little bit. Instead of using the purple this time, I'm gonna start with, oh, I have a little bit of red already on my palette. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of yellow. So right now I'm concocting. If you have brown, I would mix it with a little bit of yellow or a little bit of white because we're going to try and go for this color here. It's just like a yellowy, brownish. It can also be, if you did different colored trees, it can be something that's within that color family. So I think somebody here is doing blue trees. So if you're doing blue trees, you could maybe, actually the yellow would maybe still go with that. Um, yeah, the yellow mixed with, I wonder what the yellow mixed with the blue would look like. Before I tell you. Also, be sure to take time, just take breaks and admire your photo and give it some chances to dry in between because we're loading on so much paint so quickly. Um, it could begin to, the colors can start to mix if they're not dry when you're adding on the layers. Okay, yes. I think that would be a good idea. So if you have a different color, I'd still start with maybe like make this part up here a light yellow, but start slightly darker than your sky behind here. So I have a brown adjacent color. It's not exactly It's not exactly brown. It's not even really yellow. But it is within the color family of the top half of my photo. Okay, and oh, I'm gonna add, that's a little bit too orangey. I'm just gonna add some yellow to that. And that's also what I love about painting. There's always a way to fix any issue that you think you have. And it's always a lot more fun to go with the flow. There's also the live painting is a lot of fun. I love doing these with you guys because it does give me a chance um, to loosen up and not be such a perfectionist with my painting. Okay, so that's a little better, right? That looks nice. I added a little bit of yellow. It's a huge mix of colors, guys. I'm just using like paint that I have on my palette. So it's like a yellowy, orangey red with some white and leftover brown. And I'm just adding those dots up here, and I'm also gonna go ahead and go down. I mix it with the Q-tips, so I'm using the other side because there's way too messy. So that's why I advise against mixing with the Q-tips. But it was too late, I forgot. It's moving fast. Okay. If there's too much paint, you can start to lose definition of the circles, which isn't terrible. But if you do want it to look very like circular and some look up here at the top, you want the trees to look like they have circle leaves or flower petals. You don't want to add too much paint. And I'm adding the brown to the bottom just so that everything blends and there's no stark colors. I'm gonna also add some of this color up here because I think it's pretty and I like it in my trees. Okay, guys. So if there's any white spots you want to cover, you can go ahead and start to cover those using any of the colors that we've already used. Just however you think it will best enhance your photo. I think that looks pretty cool. All right, so we're gonna get into the waterfall now. And the trickiest part about the waterfall is making the two sections look like two separate sections. It's not that tricky. It's only tricky to think about it. But once you start to do it, you'll see it's really easy. So we're going to start with the paintbrush, and you're going to use a small rounded paintbrush. If yours has any paint on it, you'll want to go ahead and clean it off. And we're going to be drawing, or painting, excuse me, this rock here. This rock is what's going to help to make it look like it's sitting on a cliff and that the water is hitting it and then rushing off the cliff, going down to the bottom of the painting. The color of the rock is like it's a black, it's like a grayish, a dark gray, I would say. So if you have a black paint and you just want to mix it with a little bit of white, you can do that. I think I do have some white and black on my palette already. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of black It's okay if it comes out a little bit grayish. Rocks are also gray. It actually, a gray rock could look pretty if you're doing pink trees. I think that would be a really good color. Pink. So I have a dark color here. Let's see, I might make it a little darker. That I've made right here. And I am just going to make the rocks. I am going to put them right here on the right side of my waterfall. And I'm just going to make two lumps, like an M, but like a lopsided M. So I'm going to do one half of the M like that. And then the other half is going to be way bigger like that. And then I am just going to paint those in. And round off the bottoms. And just like that, we have two rocks. They do look like they're floating right now, but that's only because we haven't gone back in with our Q-tips to cover up the edges. You do want to give it a second to dry, as always. Give these things, I think, a chance to dry. Actually, while that is drying, you can clean off your brush. The same brush that you're using, the small brush, and we're going to add some streaks to the waterfall. So in here you'll see that there's some white, and there's also a little bit of it's like a black, it's like a brownish, it's a dark color. You're going to be we're only using a very little bit of it, so it doesn't matter if you use the brown or a black, just it needs to be very, very little that we're going to use to create a little streak. And that'll make it seem like there's, because usually if there's a waterfall, there's something behind it. So it kind of is like a peek through the water to the dark thing behind it. So once you've cleaned your brush, we're going to go into some white paint. I already have some white paint on my palette. If you have some white paint, you just need a little bit. You can add that, and you'll want to avoid your wet rocks because you will smear the paint. But I'm just going to go ahead and paint downwards in white right there, and then I'm going to leave a little space, and I'm going to do the same thing, just create some down strokes, just like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here, except for I'm going to do a curve. So I made like an upside down J or L with the white paint. It's just going to help add to the illusion that there's a cliff. So you may have noticed I accidentally it's hard to tell, but I accidentally picked up some paint as I was painting down the white, but I am going to leave it because it does add to the effect that I was talking about earlier. That I was going to do manually, but I did it on accident. I added a little bit of the dark color here. So if you do the same thing, it's okay. Don't panic. You haven't ruined anything. We're working with a lot of wet paint. If you're working on a canvas, actually, it might be drying a little bit differently than it's drying on my cardstock paper. So just be patient with yourself. All right. Added some white here. It's going lightly. There's not really much paint on my brush, and I'm just going in between here. And this is just creating some streaks. Paint. I'm just going to add a little bit of white paint up here. I do kind of like to add a little bit of extra white paint and then go over because it can create thick, like if I have a little bit too much paint on my brush and I create a line, it's gonna leave some paint on the page that's a little bit thicker and that straight line, and it'll make the effect of the water pop a little bit more in person. I kind of wish I could show you guys a little bit closer up. Let me see if that. So you see these, you see the darker white lines. That's because I used a little bit of extra paint. And this makes it seem like the water is rushing down. Okay, so I accidentally got a little bit of paint that's not white on my brush from painting next to the forest ground. So if you want to follow along, you can go ahead and dip the top of your brush into a dark paint, a black. I'm gonna go ahead and dip a little bit into my gray earlier that I used. And then I also have a little bit of paint already that's not white on my brush that I got accidentally. And I am going to just very lightly create a streak, maybe 2 to 3, in just random places. Okay, leave that as it is. And then we're going to get a clean Q-tip and go in with that white paint, and we're going to create the bubbles that we see here. So you're just going to go into some fresh white paint and start to add dots using your Q-tip to the top here. And this is gonna look like the foamy water that you see that you see like right before it goes over the cliff. And let's see, we're gonna create that same effect down here so that it looks like it's hit the next level and it's getting ready to fall down another cliff. So hopefully your rocks, I'm just gonna test it a little bit, touch it. Mine is a little wet, but it's not super wet. So if yours is dry, you can go ahead and do white dots over it, just lightly, like so. This way it'll look like the water is also hitting and going over the rocks. And you want to do that lightly. You don't want to, because you still want to see the rocks. So you don't want too much white paint covering it. And you'll just go right underneath as well, create a nice foamy bit of water there. And add more white paint to your Q-tip as necessary. And I'm just going to add a couple of dots down here. Okay, cool. So that's how you get the waterfall. And now for the finishing touches, let's see. We are just going to go ahead and whichever color, I like to go ahead just with one of my favorite colors. So I'm going to go in with an orangey red, and I am going to fill in any of the spaces where I feel like my trees or my background is sparse. And that'll be just the final touch that we're going to put onto our paintings. So if you already have a Q-tip with that color on it, or if you need to go ahead and grab some more, you can do so. But this is going to help to tie everything together. You just want to go ahead and fill any. Sorry, I'm having some issues with my Q-tips. Okay, so you just want to go ahead and fill in any of the spaces. So there's a couple of spaces on here that I want to add some paint to, and you really wanted to wait until it was dry. That way you don't mix colors together too much. And it's really nice to layer it as well once it's dry. I'm getting in front of the tree trunk here too. It helps blend it into the idea of there being a forest. But it's nice to layer it when it's dry because you can see the colors on top of each other a lot easier. I'm just going to add some more here. Okay, and then I'm going to take a clean brush and some white paint and sign my painting. So if you guys are done, you guys can also sign your painting. I like to do my initials in the bottom right hand. And I use white paint because it shows up really well, but you can use any color that you like. And right down here, I'm just going to write my initials. And we're done, guys. Thank you so much for following along with me. I can't wait to see your versions of these landscape paintings. Thank you guys, and see you next time.